Tonight's video is another video on helping you find details to pep up the small topic that you've been working so hard to focus on. My objectives for tonight are to help you understand how that concept of being specific applies to details as well as it does to your smaller subjects. And we're going to look at how we can tell what's specific when we talk about images and details and what is general. Remember that the directions for tonight, you should be taking notes in your ISN. Put a quote from James McBride, "The details tell the story." That's true. The details you choose are going to decide whether your writing works or not. In this video, I'm going to give you 3 very specific strategies, in addition to the 2 you got from last night's video: clarification, description, and example. All clarification means is adding a bit more information to make your point a little clearer. It's important when you clarify to only add the information that's going to add to your focus. You don't want to lead the readers off track, but you do want them to be very sure of what you're trying to focus them on. Description is a second way of adding detail to a passage. When you describe, you appeal to the reader's senses, and you try and help them take the 2-dimensional writing that you have on your page and make it into a 3-dimensional movie in their head. And finally, example. An example is just exactly what it sounds like. If you're talking about heroism, you show an example of a brave person. If you're talking about freedom, you give an example of a specific kind of freedom. Let's look at what these look like in student writing. Here's 4 passages. First of all, we're going to decide which are general and which are specific. Portland, Oregon has been identified as one of the greenest cities in the entire country. It has one of the best recycling programs in the nation. It has an unrivaled system of hiking and biking trails designed to encourage fuel-free transportation and reduce traffic. And it has plans for solar-powered energy system to promote use of non-polluting energy. Well, their point is that Portland, Oregon is green, and they give me some very specific information. They don't really describe it, but I get some pretty specific information as to how. So I don't think this is too general. Let's look at number 2. Our current national health system needs thorough evaluation and possible revision. Well, I'm not sure what possible revision means. That's a little vague to me. Many people are unhappy. Ooh, words like unhappy and happy and good and bad and fun are so vague. They don't tell you anything. With the current state of affairs, they are not receiving or cannot afford medical attention to which they feel they should be entitled. I don't know what medical attention means. And they feel they should be entitled? Well, I don't get that either. Some people say that our healthcare system is not competitive with comparable systems worldwide. Well, what do we mean by competitive, and what do we mean by comparable? I'm sorry, this one is really general. Animals moved onto the endangered species list, those threatened with extinction within a generation, do not necessarily remain there indefinitely. The peregrine falcon, for example, look at that, the transition word tells me that right away, was listed as endangered in 1972, when a ban prohibited killing them was enacted. Since then, many have taken to nesting on skyscrapers, which are not unlike the cliffs on which they would normally nest, and their numbers are growing, prompting their delisting in 1999. There's a statistic, as well as there's one here. This is pretty specific. Number 4, we think of prescription drugs as a remedy for things that ail us. Ugh, things is like happy and unhappy. I have no idea what a thing is. Taking drugs in combination, however, can provide dangerous. How? In what way? I don't know what dangerous means in this passage. These combinations lead to adverse side effects that may have unexpected, I don't know what unexpected means, and negative consequences. It is always wise to check with a pharmacist to determine potential interactions. Well, what might potential interactions be? This one doesn't work either. Okay, pause the video for a moment and read 1 and 3 to yourselves and decide which of the strategies that we talked about, clarification, description, and examples, did either passage use. You should have this paused. Portland, Oregon adds clarification. It gives us a little more information as to why it's green. It has the best recycling program. It has unrivaled system of hiking and bike trails. It has plans for a solar-powered energy system. It doesn't really describe them, and it doesn't give us specific examples of them, but it does clarify a little more information why Oregon is green. Number 3, well, they tell you, for example, they talk about the peregrine falcon. So absolutely, they use concrete examples, a specific animal. But they also describe how skyscrapers are like the cliffs. And they clarify what endangered means. So this one uses all 3. Did you find them all? Here's a passage of student writing. It's called Killer Bugs. Remember that the title is important because it tells you what the focus is going to be. We're going to revise some of this to see if we can't add those strategies, clarification, descriptive detail, and examples and make this better. People who were around in the late 1960s recall very clearly the excitement of going to the moon. It was an amazing time. For the first time in our history, people would actually set foot on the moon some 2,400 miles from home. Of course, there could be dangers. Some contamination from the moon could make its way back to Earth. Scientists were particularly worried about germs. This possibility posed a grave threat, to say the least. Fortunately, NASA was prepared. They took careful precautions to make sure no bacterial infection would spread from the moon to the Earth. Well, okay. Let's look at the first paragraph. The title is Killer Bugs, and there's nothing about bugs in the first paragraph, so this is the lead. It's just to get the reader hooked, interested, and get them reading. So we're not going to do too much descriptive detail or too much clarification, just enough specifics to keep them interested. People who were around in the late 1960s, that's very vague. I did some research. It was July 20th, 1969. People who were around on July 20th, 1969, that's clarification, recall very clearly the excitement of going to the moon. It was an amazing time. There's another word like happy, sad. Amazing means absolutely nothing. I've already said it was exciting. I'm getting rid of this. For the first time in our history, people would actually set foot on the moon. People doesn't tell me who, nurses, doctors. I'm going to be very specific. I'm going to put descriptive detail. Astronauts would actually set foot on the moon some 240,000 miles from home. That reads much better. Let's go to the next paragraph. What I did here was add clarification and descriptive detail. Here's the second paragraph. Of course there could be dangers. Well, that's dumb. I'm going to put, I don't know what dangers. I'm going to add some descriptive details. I'm going to tell you what kind of dangers. Scientists worried about fuel problems, temperature extremes, and a zero-gravity environment. Okay, of course there could be dangers. Scientists worried about fuel problems, temperature extremes, and a zero-gravity environment. Contamination. Okay, I need to add something else then. No one was sure if there was life on Earth, on the moon. And scientists feared unseen deadly, here's where the bugs come in, microorganisms. All right, now listen to what we have. Of course there could be dangers. Scientists worried about fuel problems, temperature extremes in a zero-gravity environment. And then no one was sure if there was life on the moon, and scientists feared unseen deadly microorganisms. Some contamination from the moon could make its way back to Earth. I'm getting rid of this. I don't need it. This possibility, I need to add something here as well, I think. I'm going to put it over here. The fear was, if this happened, and this is the contamination, a deadly outbreak could destroy life on Earth. All right, now let's look at what we got. I added 3 details. Of course, there could be dangers. Here's specific detail. Scientists worried about fuel problems, temperature extremes, and a zero-gravity environment. No one was sure if there was life on the moon, and scientists feared unseen deadly microorganisms. Some contamination from the moon could make its way to Earth. The fear was that if this happened, a deadly outbreak could destroy life on Earth. This possibility posed a grave threat, to say the least. That's so much better, and all I did was add clarification, descriptive details. This you should have received in class from me. Blue 1 and Blue 3, you didn't receive it. You're going to have to come to me Friday and get this. I want you to glue this into on your ISN opposite your notebook, opposite the notes you took. Would you use the CDE strategy and try and revise this terrible paragraph into something that's a little more interesting? We'll be comparing your revisions in class on Tuesday and Wednesday. Remember the directions tonight. Watch the video, be an active viewer, pause it, rewind it, watch it more than once. Do the annotations I ask you to do, take notes in your ISN, record a summary on NiceNet in the conferencing link, and then record your question underneath your notes. Have a good evening, and I will see you next week.